Your general senses are those of touch, pressure, temperature, and pain. Receptors can be classified based on their location on the body. Exteroceptors monitor the external environment. They're on the surface of your body. These receptors have to report to your conscious brain. Since your external environment changes constantly, you have to make conscious decisions about how to respond to those environmental changes. The interoceptors, or visceroceptors, are internal receptors. They're associated with organs and blood vessels, and they monitor your internal environment. Since your internal environment is controlled by homeostatic mechanisms, interoreceptors tend to report only to the unconscious brain. A group of interoreceptors, a specialized group, are the proprioceptors. These are receptors that are in the joints or near the joints and help monitor body position. These work with the basis of stretch of tendons, and they report to the cerebellum, telling the cerebellum what position your various joints are in. For example, right now your knee is probably bent at about a 90-degree angle. If you go to stand up, your proprioreceptors will report that information to the cerebellum. This will let the cerebellum know exactly which muscles need to contract and how forcefully they must contract for you to stand up smoothly. Proprioreceptors are very important in that smooth motion of your body and help you a little bit with balance. Tactile receptors are those receptors that report touch. One tactile receptor is the Meissner's corpuscle. The Meissner's corpuscles are very close to the surface of the body and they respond to light touch. They're located in the dermal papillae. You'll remember from studying the skin that the dermis has ridges on it, and the epidermis follows along those ridges. This is what gives you fingerprints. The dermal papillae are these little ridges in the dermis, and here in the very tips are where we have Meissner's corpuscles. Pacinian corpuscles are also involved in pressure kinds of touch. They respond to very deep pressure and they're located deep in the dermis. They're bulb-like structures. And this is a Pacinian corpuscle that's been taken out. You can see it's a bulb-like structure. This little tail is actually the nerve that would report to the brain. When this is compressed, this is what stimulates this receptor so that deep pressure is involved here. If you look at it on this picture, the Meissner's corpuscles up here in the dermal papillae, very close to the surface, so light touch would stimulate them. The Pacinian corpuscles deep in the dermis would require a lot more pressure for those to be stimulated. And here on the skin model, Meissner's corpuscles and Pacinian corpuscles. Your receptors are located in different concentrations on your different body parts. You'll remember that the central sulcus was what divided the frontal lobe from the parietal lobe in the brain, and that the premotor gyrus was where your motor cortex was located. Your post-central gyrus was where the somatic sensory cortex was located. The somatic sensory cortex is where all of those receptors, those extra receptors, report their information. This rather unusual layout of the body indicates that we don't have the same number of receptors on all of our body parts. Some areas we have a lot more receptors. It takes more brain to cover those receptors. Other areas we have many fewer receptors scattered over a larger part of the body. Notice here the face, the lips take up a huge part of the somatic sensory cortex, and yet the trunk of the body takes up much less space than the face. So there are fewer receptors here than there are on the face, meaning that they're scattered more widely. The less dense the receptors are, the less precise the information is to the brain. A receptor that has to cover a lot of territory picks up information from all of that territory, but it goes to the brain as being from that particular spot on the body. One of the tests we can do for determining receptor density is the two-point discrimination test. In order to do this test, you will need either calipers or scissors, something with 2 points on it. You're going to try to determine your 2-point threshold. You're going to start with the 2 points relatively far apart and touch a part of your body. If you feel two distinct points, then you are stimulating two different receptors. As you bring the points closer and closer together, you will eventually get to a point where even though you've got 2 points touching the body, you will only detect it as 1 point. This will mean that you are only stimulating one receptor at that point. The closer the points get, the denser the receptors. Another way to determine receptor density is with tactile localization. Now, to do this test, you'll need 2 different colored pens and another person to help you. You're going to try to determine if you can reproduce where you have been touched. So your partner will touch a part of your body with one colored pen, and then without looking, no visual input here, you're going to try to reproduce that touch. You're going to try to touch the same place. Again, the closer you are to the original touch point, the denser the receptors are in that part of your body. They used this test in doing some of that cortex mapping where they were drawing the body on the surface of the brain. Adaptation is something that your body will do when it stops paying attention to information that's coming in from a receptor. To test adaptation, all you need is a small flat object. You will place this on some part of your body, and after a while, you will notice that you don't notice it anymore. Basically, your receptors will have lost sensitivity to that particular stimulus. It's sort of like your brain figures, I know it's there, I'm just going to stop paying attention to it. Touch receptors adapt fairly quickly. This is a good thing because when you first put on your clothes in the morning, you may notice that seam on the shoulder or the tag in the back a little bit, but very quickly you stop noticing those things. The one sense that does not adapt is pain. Pain receptors indicate that something is wrong with your body, you need to take care of it, and so pain receptors do not show any adaptation. Now, there is an interesting phenomenon called referred pain. Your body is wired so that any sensation, any stimulation along a nerve that's going to the brain, your brain tells you that it's coming from the spot it's supposed to come from, not necessarily from the spot it's coming from. And to do this particular experiment, you will need a bowl of ice water. And we're going to have you put your elbow in the ice water. Your ulnar nerve picks up information from your pinky finger and your ring finger and that medial part of your hand in the center of your hand. Normally, stimulation from that area travels along the ulnar nerve and your brain says it's coming from the fingers or that part of your hand. Your ulnar nerve is exposed at the elbow. If we stimulate your ulnar nerve at that point, that information goes to your brain, but your brain is hardwired already to say, well, that information came from the hand. So after a while, instead of feeling the sensation in your elbow, you will start to feel the sensation in your hand. Even though your hand is not the point of the stimulus, your brain is telling you that something is going on with your hand. In other words, your brain is wired to interpret any stimulus along that nerve as coming from the area it's expecting it to come from. One of the signs of a heart attack in men is pain in the left arm or sometimes the left jaw. Those visceroreceptors from the heart normally do not go to the conscious part of the brain. They go to an unconscious part of the brain. But those nerves travel with nerves. They're bundled together. Those individual nerve axons are bundled together with nerves that go to other parts of your body. And in men, those nerves from the heart are bundled with nerves that come from the arm and jaw area. If those neurons from the heart are stimulated strong enough, they will irritate the surrounding neurons in the nerve, and your brain will get information saying, I'm getting pain from my arm or I'm getting pain from my jaw, even though the pain is really coming from the heart. There are a number of conditions that give different kinds of referred pain. For example, pain from the kidneys tends to refer to the lower back. You'll feel as though you've pulled a muscle out in your back. Pain from the gallbladder refers to your left shoulder. So sometimes doctors can diagnose something. Somebody comes in complaining about pain in one spot, And the doctor, because he knows about referred pain, goes, no, that's not where the problem is, it's elsewhere. So they at least look elsewhere to see if they can find the place that the pain is being referred from.